Frequently in Photoshop, you're going to want to make changes to just an isolated portion of your image, and selections and masking can help us do this. Probably the most common selection tools are the Marquee tools and the Lasso tools, so let's look at those first. Now, in order to draw a selection, we're going to open up a new file, and this new file is going to be maybe 7 by 5 inches at, say, 150 pixels per inch. Click OK. You can see we have a new blank white document. I'll go ahead and zoom in once using Command+ on the Mac or Control+ on Windows, just so that it fills our screen. Now, if I tap the M key, I get the Marquee tool. If I tap the L key, I get the Lasso tool. But both of these tools have additional Marquee and Lasso tools nested underneath them. So if you click and hold on one of them, you can see the flyout menu, and I've got my rectangular Marquee tool and also my elliptical Marquee tool. There's actually 2 additional tools, the single row and the single column Marquee tools. They don't have the M key assigned to them. You can do this under the custom keyboard shortcuts, but because these tools are used just for kind of very specific reasons, and it's not that common, they don't have the keyboard shortcut. If we click and hold on the Lasso tool, you can see that we have not only the regular lasso, which will help us draw just freeform lines, but also the polygonal lasso tool and the magnetic lasso tool. All right, so we're going to begin with the Marquee tool, so I'll tap the M key. And if I click and drag, you'll notice that by default it drags out from the corner. And as I'm dragging, you can see that there's a little heads-up display if I wanted to check the size. When I release the cursor, then the heads-up display disappears. And if I position my cursor inside of these marching ants, when I click and drag, you'll notice that I'm not moving any pixels. I'm actually only dragging the actual selection marquee and not anything underneath it. If I want to deselect this, I can just click anywhere, either outside or inside that marquee. Let's go ahead and drag another marquee. This time I'm going to hold down the Shift key. You can see when I hold down the Shift key that I'm constraining the aspect ratio. In this case, I'm creating a perfect square. I'll go ahead and deselect that. And this time I'll drag from the center of my image and I'll hold down the Option key. You can see when I hold down the Option key on the Mac or the Alt key on Windows that I'm dragging the marquee from the center as opposed to the upper left. If I release the Option or the Alt key, then you can see that it's dragging from the upper left. Remember, I started this one in the center. All right, let's go ahead and deselect that. And I'm going to click and drag out a rather large rectangle here. And now I want to add to this selection. So there are keyboard shortcuts to add to a selection, subtract to a selection, even intersect a selection. Or you can select the icons at the top of the option bar to do the same thing. So here we've got the Add To, Subtract From, and Intersect. So we'll click on the Add To, and I'm just going to add a small rectangle right over here. Now you can see that I didn't quite start the rectangle in alignment. So as long as I still have my mouse down, I can hold down the space bar and I can actually reposition this. Then when I let go of the space bar, I can go ahead and continue drawing it larger or smaller. So I'm just going to add another little rectangle right there. You can see instead of having 2 selections, those have become one single selection. Now, if I want to subtract an area, then I'll select this third icon, and I just want to subtract a little square, maybe right around here. And now I want to actually add something back. So I'll move back to the Add To selection. You can see I can just drag out my cursor like this in order to add this area. Because remember, what looks like those little windows right now, I've subtracted that, so they're not selected. So I'm just adding back in some little window panes here in my illustration. All right, now I want to subtract one more thing. This time, instead of changing tools, I'm just going to hold down the Option key. You can see my cursor change. When it's got the plus, that means I'm going to add. When I hold down the Option key, I get the minus. And I'll just start right about here and just subtract this out away. And I don't have to be exact here at the bottom because remember, we're subtracting out. So I can actually subtract more or subtract further below the original selection because it's not part of the selection anyway. And again, if I wanted to change where this started, if I didn't quite get it in alignment with the top of those other squares, I can go ahead and hold down the space bar. That allows me to change my point of origin, let go of the space bar, and then I can continue dragging. So what we're doing is we're creating a basic mask. Anything inside the selection would be affected by whatever we do, and anything outside would not be affected. So let's go ahead and give this a try. I'm going to go to the Edit menu, and I'm going to select Fill. And for the contents, I'm going to use a color, and we'll just select maybe a yellow color here. And we'll make it pretty pale. Click OK. OK again, and now we've filled that region that we had selected. If I do have one of these icons selected, like the Add To or the Subtract From, you'll notice that just clicking outside of the selected area doesn't deselect. So you might want to learn a keyboard shortcut, and that's Command-D or Control-D on Windows to quickly deselect anything that's selected in your image. Now let's scoot over to the Elliptical Marquee tool. If we just click and drag, the Elliptical Marquee tool might take a little getting used to. Let's deselect that for a moment, and I'm actually going to show my rulers under the View menu so that we can drag out some guides. So I'm just clicking and dragging in the ruler area. I want to drag one out from the left side and one out from the top. So I have a horizontal and vertical guide that just connect. And the reason I'm drawing this is just to show you that if I place my cursor with the Elliptical Marquee in the crosshairs there of where those two overlap, when I click and drag, do you see where I'm drawing the marquee from? So the circle is going to start in the upper left, and I'm going to drag out just like I was dragging out the rectangle by default. Now, if I wanted this to behave in a different manner, let's go ahead and use Command-D or Control-D in order to deselect that. And this time, I'll put my crosshairs right there in the intersection of those two guides, and I'm going to hold down the Option key. And now watch as I drag out, you can see that I can drag this elliptical marquee from the center. And of course, if I hold down the Shift key, I get a perfect circle. So we'll go ahead and draw a circle right about there. And now I really don't need those guides showing anymore. So we'll select View and then Show. And I can just hide my guides by selecting them here from the list. Those guides are actually still in my file. If I ever wanted to show them again, all I need to do is choose View and then Show and Guides again. If I actually wanted to delete the guides, I'd go into the View menu and I would select Clear Guides. Now I'm not hiding them, I've actually deleted them from the file. Now this looks like a nice little sun up here that I could be putting in the sky, but let's go ahead and change it to a moon. So I'm going to select either this third icon here, or I can simply hold down the Option or the Alt key, and that's going to allow me to subtract from the selection. So I'll start roughly here and click and start dragging. Now I didn't quite get it where I wanted, so with that Option or Alt key still held down, I'll add to it the spacebar. Remember, that helps me to reposition the point of origin. So I'll just reposition that maybe right here, release the spacebar, and then release my cursor. So now I have the moon, and we can go to the Edit menu again and choose Fill. This time I'll fill with 50% gray and click OK. We'll also add just a little doorknob down here. I'll just click and drag. And now instead of using the Edit menu to select a fill, I'll use the Shift key and tap the Delete key, and that will bring up the Fill dialog box. Let's go ahead and choose a different color for the doorknob. I'll click on Color. And this time, if I wanted to sample a color from my image, you'll notice that while the color picker's up, I can reposition my cursor over the top of my image and click with the eyedropper to sample that color. We'll just make it a little bit darker. Click OK, OK again, and it will fill that. All right, we'll deselect using Command or Control-D. Now let's move over to the Lasso tools. I'll select the first one, just the regular Lasso tool, and I'm going to zoom out using Command- or Control-. The Lasso tool has a hotspot. That's the point where you're going to be dragging and drawing from, and that is at the tip of the little arrow. If you prefer, you can turn on the Cap Locks key, in which case you get your crosshairs, and then the hotspot is right there in the center. So I'm going to actually start right here and just start dragging out. And then I'm going to drag beyond the image size, come all the way down, all the way around, and then start dragging again. Now, that whole time I had my mouse down. So most people don't know that you can drag beyond the canvas size, but certainly you can. And I don't even have to try to drag a straight line between where I am now and where I started this. If I just release the cursor, Photoshop will automatically close my selection and draw that line for me. So now we can fill this with another color. I'll use Shift-Delete. We'll choose a color here, and then select maybe a green. Click OK, OK again. So the Lasso tool is great when you just need to draw some freeform lines. Excellent. I'll use Command or Control-D to deselect that. And now we'll switch over to our Polygonal Lasso tool. This tool is great for drawing straight lines. You can see if I just click, wherever I move my cursor, Photoshop's going to draw a straight line between where I click the first time and where I click the second time. So I can go ahead and click and click and click and draw my own polygons. Now, if I want to close the selection, I can either double click, in which case Photoshop will close the selection for me automatically, or if I return to my start point, you can see that the cursor changes and I get the little 0. That tells me that Photoshop's going to close that selection. Now I don't want that, so we'll use Command or Control D. And then I'll just make a little roof line here, starting maybe in the center of the door. We'll come down over to the right. Remember, I'm just clicking once and then letting go of my mouse. If I want to make this a straight line, I can hold down the Shift key, come over to this side, maybe right about there, equidistance, click again, and then I can either position my cursor over the starting point, or if I want to, I can just double click and Photoshop will close that selection. If you've accidentally deselected, you can always use the Select menu, and if you just deselected it, you should be able to reselect. All right, I'll fill this with a color using Shift-Delete, and then selecting the color again. You do have to click on it in order for the color picker to come up. Move down here and maybe get a dark brown roof. Click OK, and OK again, and then Command or Control to deselect. So as you can see, the Marquee tools are great for selecting your geometric shapes, and the Lasso tools are great for your more kind of free-form shapes. And of course, you can use any of these tools in combination with one another to make more complex shapes.